any other country in the world, and now some lawmakers want to make sure that imported goods are not made by forced labor. Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney is co-sponsoring a bipartisan new bill that would require companies to report what they're doing to make sure that there is no slavery or child labor involved in their production of goods. That information would then be made available to consumers, and sponsors of the bill say that raising the awareness about human trafficking is the first step towards dealing with what is actually a growing problem. Joining me now to discuss this bill and this issue is Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney. Congresswoman, thanks very much for being with us.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Liz. It's good to be back on your show.
So, okay, when did it become obvious to you that something needed to be done along these lines, because this is a problem that has been going on for quite some time?
Well, as you know, I've authored a series of bills that have cracked down on sex trafficking, specifically the State Department's TIPS program that tracks what countries are doing internationally to combat sex trafficking. And as you look at the problem, you can see that it is a growing one. The FBI says that it is the strongest effort by organized crime, preceded only by selling illegal guns and selling illegal drugs. But unlike guns and drugs that are sold only once, a human body can be sold over and over and over again. The State Department estimates that roughly 12.3 million people are trafficked, either sex trafficking or forced slavery. And it's really the slavery issue of the 21st century. And the Labor Department says that for every sex trafficked person, there are 9 that are in forced slavery conditions, in some cases in the United States.
Now, okay, so Congresswoman, this is actually an information bill, if you will. What you want is for consumers to be able to know how the products that they purchase get made. And then subsequently, you hope that people will use their buying power to basically shut down this kind of practice. But there's no enforcement, right? I mean, you can't force a company to say, we're using 5-year-olds to make our sneakers.
Well, it does not tell companies what to do, but it requires them to tell the public and the Securities Exchange Committee what they are doing. It requires them, if you have over 100 million in business, to file an annual report to the SEC, which will be put on their website, the efforts that they're making to track whether or not their goods or services or agricultural products are developed in any way or produced by slave labor. And investors and consumers then can vote with their pocketbooks. I certainly don't want to wear clothes that are produced by slave labor, or to eat food that is produced by slave labor. And we can make a choice of what products we buy, and certainly enforce and support products that have a supply chain that is clear of forced slavery.
Don't you then come to a situation where, you know, some of these products, because of the manner in which they're produced, are cheap, for lack of a better word, and then you have people who say, well, I'd love to be more thoughtful about what I buy, but I just can't afford it.
Well, that's a choice that an individual can make. I, for one, do not want to wear clothes or eat food that was prepared by forced labor, but at least it gives the consumer and the investors a choice. And sunlight is the best disinfectant. We had someone at my press conference yesterday from Compass, a huge multi-billion-dollar company here in America, that on their own initiative is working very hard to make sure that the employees that work in their factories are treated well and not have in their supply chain any forced labor or slavery labor. Will this be the total answer? No, but it's certainly a step in the right direction. This bill is modeled after one that passed in the great state of California last year. It has bipartisan support, and quite frankly, I was looking, Liz, after this very dysfunctional, polarized Congress, what can I pass that everybody would agree on? And certainly Republicans, Democrats, Independents, and Conservatives, we are united in opposition to sex trafficking, slavery. It's in our Constitution. It's one of the values of our country, the treatment of equality and justice and fairness. It's a major principle in our country, and we are united literally across the aisle on this issue. I am hopeful that we will be able to pass it in this Congress. I'm not hopeful about a lot of my other initiatives, but this one I think I can pass.
Do you actually
because it's the right thing to do, and it's American values.
Do you have a same as in the Senate?
I haven't secured a Senate sponsor yet. I literally just introduced it the last day of the Congress. We finally came to an agreement, and it was a very frustrating experience, and I, in my spare time, started working on the bill. I wanted to get it finished and get it moving because I do think we can pass it.
You know, let's talk just briefly about that. You were a no vote on that debt ceiling deal, and along with a number of your other New York-seated colleagues, save one, I believe. And I would ask you why you did that.
Well, I voted for a clean vote for a debt ceiling bill. And we had raised the debt ceiling 78 times since 1960. And it wasn't a big political football. But the way that this progressed, they tied the raising of the debt ceiling, which we had to do. There was never a question that America would default on our full faith and credit.
Right.
We would live up to our responsibilities. But they tied it to really, I think, a terrible bill that immediately cut roughly $1 trillion, raised roughly $1.2 trillion, and then 6 months from now, we will have a commission, 6 Republicans, 6 Democrats, report back on an additional $1.5 trillion in cuts.
Right.
Throughout this process, the Republicans put on the chopping block Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and Democrats had to fight very, very hard to save those Democratic programs. I believe it should have been a balanced approach. I supported President Obama's efforts to secure a balanced approach that had both revenues and a cut in expenditures and focus on job development. But what we got was a very one-sided deal. There were no revenues. They wouldn't even look at cutting subsidies to corporate jets. They wouldn't look at cutting subsidies to oil companies that are making huge profits. And it's very unfair to put it all on discretionary spending. It was disproportionately hurting my city and those that are disadvantaged, and women and children.
So, Congresswoman, we're about to run out of time, but I just want to ask you then, if in fact you are so divided down in Washington, do you believe that it's possible that the President and Congress, specifically the Republicans who are in control of your House at this point, managed to get anything done? Specifically, when you talk about a bipartisan committee that is evenly split, it doesn't sound to me, it sounds to me like we're going to be fighting this fight at least through 2012.
Well, if they disagree, then there will be automatic across-the-board cuts,
right.
Which would be very problematic because Homeland Security is put in with defense cuts, and it would hurt us. We were cut tremendously, and when you talk about Homeland Security monies, you're talking about saving lives. And with 9/11 coming up, and knowing that we're in a league by ourselves in terms of the threat, Police Commissioner Kelly says there have been 7 different attempts since 9/11 to harm New Yorkers. So there's certain areas that should not be cut. But I do believe we will pass my bill. We will pass the supply chain bill. If we can't agree on eradicating slavery and ending sex trafficking, I believe in a positive way we will pass this bill and move forward towards eradicating probably one of the cruelest forms of abuse to mankind.
Well, Congresswoman, I want to thank you very much for joining us. We shall see, of course, whether or not there will be bipartisan agreement on anything. In the meantime, Carolyn Maloney, thanks very much for being with us.
Thank you, Liz Benjamin. We will agree on this bill, I'm confident. Otherwise, we're going to have some challenging times. Always a pleasure to be with you. Good night and good luck.
Thank you.